Okay, it's now live.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. All right. It's 3:30, so we'll call a meeting of the Dunn County Executive Committee to order Wednesday, April 14th. Let the roll show. I believe everyone is here from the committee and numerous staff with us. And I need approval of minutes.
I so move.
Supervisor Steen moves, Supervisor McCullough seconds. Is there any discussion with the minutes? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We have no public comments. We're going to change the agenda order around if it is okay with the committee, because Keith has to get to another meeting after this. So after the staff reports, I'll move 8, which has a number of A through E. We'll do that before 6, if that's okay with the committee. So we'll go to staff reports. County Manager, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. In your packet of materials for the meeting is a draft agenda for next Wednesday, April the 21st, County Board meeting. Some of the highlights: we have one employee of 24 years who is retiring and will be acknowledged. I will give my update on COVID-19 here in Dunn County, as I have been doing. We'll review the purchase orders over $40,000. And I will also mention that we've initiated the searches, in fact, concluded the search for county treasurer. That'll come up later on this agenda as well. And the status of the search for replacing the county clerk. The annual reports that will be in the packet for next Wednesday include emergency communications and emergency management, the sheriff, and the libraries. As we have been doing throughout COVID, we're not asking for those to be presented orally, but the materials will be in the packet. At this time, as I always do ask, are there any chairs of standing committees who wish to give an oral report on activities at their committee at the county board meeting on the 21st? Hearing none, I will strike that from the agenda. The other items we will cover in the meeting today: the resolutions, reports, and ordinances from the standing committees, including this executive committee. 2 changes I will note on the agenda as well. One is under Committee on Administration. There's 2 items that are listed. There will be a 3rd item, which will be a resolution appointing the county treasurer. And we'll talk about that when we get to it on the agenda today. The second is I had included under Highway Committee E, the 2nd reading on the ordinance related to ATV routes, but we actually waived the 2nd reading last time, so that will drop off. That is the agenda for the county board meeting, unless there are any changes, additions, deletions, corrections.
Any questions? Anything? If not, moving on to COVID-19.
COVID-19 report. I put out a report this morning. Hopefully you all had a chance to see. The biggest highlight is, along with the rest of the country, we have put on pause a vaccine clinic that the health department was going to conduct with Johnson & Johnson vaccines. I will highlight again, it is an overabundance of caution that the CDC has done this. There have been, to the best of my knowledge, 6 confirmed cases of a rare type of blood clotting associated with people who received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's out of something like 6.8 million doses that have been administered of that vaccine. So, and the reality is with any vaccine, there is always a percentage, hopefully a small percentage, but a percentage of people who have negative health responses to vaccines. So we're hopeful that the conclusion will be that those are very, very rare exceptions because the Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine is an important part of the arsenal to try to get out from underneath this pandemic. The second thing that I highlighted for COVID-19 today was the changes in travel restrictions as it relates to people who are fully vaccinated. The CDC came out and the Wisconsin Department of Health endorsed, and so we are endorsing that if you are in fact fully vaccinated, even if you travel by plane or bus, you're in close proximity to other people for more than 15 minutes, you do not need to quarantine upon return, which is a change. After travel, the standard had been quarantining for 7 to 14 days, depending on your circumstances. We are all still strongly advised to monitor our health. If we feel any symptoms, to stay home, get tested, and wait for those results before returning to the place of work. And of course, we are still in the position of encouraging everyone, when you're out and about, away from your home, to wear masks when you're out, maintain social distancing, and avoid getting into large groups of people indoors or outdoors. So those things remain unchanged. And that's the update on COVID-19.
Any questions? If not, we will move on to county treasurer update.
We will have a resolution. I will let Supervisor Headland address it when he's reviewing the other resolutions that are coming from the Committee on Administration later in the meeting today. So I'll let him address the county treasurer search. As far as the county clerk search is concerned, at my last check, we had 4 applicants for county clerk. I had not had a chance to vet them to know if they are viable or not. And we were waiting, Heather Murray, our director of HR, and I were waiting to pull the trigger on whether or not we can schedule them for interviews in front of the Committee on Administration, just as we did with the treasurer's applicants. We had a special meeting of the Committee on Administration on Tuesday for the interviews of the 3 candidates for treasurer. We met in the morning, and then the committee was able to make a recommendation by noon. We have the possibility of doing the same thing on the regularly scheduled date for Committee on Administration on April 22nd. If we have enough viable, apparently qualified candidates to consider, we're waiting to see if that comes in time as to whether or not we can do it on that Thursday, perhaps in the morning. We'll send out a poll inquiring if Committee on Administration members are available to meet early and conduct those interviews at that time. So that's the update on those 2 important positions.
Any questions? If not, now, if it's all right with the committee, I would like to move to 8A and move to the budget adjustments. And I need a motion for this. Supervisor Steen moves, Supervisor Johnson seconds. Speaking to this, I would assume maybe CFO, Mr. Stry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
This budget adjustment, as we've talked about historically, we're trying to combine requests so that we don't have individual actions on them. So this combines requests from the UW Extension as well as the Human Services Department. And the detail on both of those are in the resolution. If it's passed or if it's approved, it increases the budget by $222,402, but it has no impact upon the current levies. So it is a recommendation of both standing committees that would be involved here to approve this budget adjustment.
Any questions? Discussion at all? If not, all in favor, say aye then.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we'll move into item B, adopting the 22 through 26 capital improvement plan. I need a motion for this.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Supervisor Anderson moves. Supervisor McCullough seconds. Discussion. Supervisor Quinn.
Just have a question. I noticed, or I think I noticed on there that there was no place in the calendar for adopting the capital plan for that year. How are we handling that? Since it could be adjusted each year, as I understand it, right? So shouldn't we have a point?
The
Excuse me.
calendar that we're passing today, that we're looking at today, we've already done, we're doing it now, so it wasn't necessary to have it. But in the future, our anticipation, it'll be in the beginning of the year, each year, that we will talk about the capital improvement plan in the first quarter. And probably aiming for April adoption each year. Keith, you can correct me if that's anticipation is wrong. Probably aiming for April of each year to adopt the capital improvement plan portion of the budget, and then we go on with a normal budget process thereafter. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think Supervisor Quinn is asking if someplace in the calendar we should be adopting that we are going to go ahead and borrow $3 million or X million dollars per year for the budget. And that actually would be taken up when we do the budget itself. This would give the way I see it, this capital plan would give our administration something to work with when they set up the budget for the capital improvements of each year that we go ahead and do the budget. Am I correct in my thinking?
I'm going to defer for a moment to our CFO to explain how we're going to integrate the capital improvement plan into the budget process. He and I have talked at length, but I'm going to let him start.
Thank you. And of course, when you're in it in details, it all becomes just natural. So I apologize for that. Supervisor Quinn, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what you're suggesting. Are you talking with the budget calendar? We want to add that to this where it's not specifically identified?
Yeah, well, I'm asking whether that would be appropriate. And the one reason I asked that is because at the last county board meeting, we had some concern from supervisors that the decisions about the capital budget seem to be primarily focused on the executive committee. And that's true. That's probably the case. But I think it would be helpful if it's appropriate to identify a point in the calendar where we make that decision. I think it would be good to do so. If not, then I'm fine with it.
Sure. And we can certainly do that. It's just a few more line items when you get to the budget calendar that you'll be adopting later in the agenda.
Right.
Having said that, that is the intent on this process. The approach that was approved by the county board last year did identify that in January, February timeframe, executive would talk about goals. And then following that, you would have a workshop as a county board, the entire board, to review the requests that were submitted by departments. And then as a full county board, after review by executive committee, act on the plan. But certainly we can clarify that so everybody's on the same page. But that was the timeline or the action approach that was endorsed by the county board last year. But if we can articulate that a little bit better, we certainly will make.
If it makes sense, that's fine.
You bet.
Let me make sure that we're also clear. We have in front of you under the capital improvement plans issue a draft resolution for adoption by the county board at the April 21st meeting, approving the fiscal year 22 to 26 capital improvement plan.
Right. No, I understand that. I think it's appropriate. I just noticed that when we laid out the calendar for planning the budget, that we did not include that step in the calendar.
Yeah, and that, I saw that too. What we really should do is note that on the fiscal year 22 budget calendar, that the April 28 line should include not only the budget, fiscal year 22 budget guidelines, calendar and forms, but approval of the capital improvement.
Right.
plan.
I think it'd be helpful if we did
Yes.
that. Yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely. And when you get to that agenda item, and I don't know if I'll be at my other meeting by then or not, if you want to make that recommendation as an adjustment, we can certainly make that change.
And I can,
in the final
I'll
form.
make a note on that right now.
Yep.
It'll be actually between the April 14 date and the April 28 date. Say April 21st, county board approves capital plan.
So if we approve that at the county board, then what you're saying is no matter what we do with the budget, we're in November when we approve that we have decided already to borrow $3 million for capital improvement.
We can, if we decide to do something different by the time we complete the budget review, the creation process. If we decide we want to change the capital plan that's adopted in April, we can do that by repealing the previous resolution and adopting a new as part of the budget.
Okay.
So we're not locked in, it's not locked in stone, but it is intended to complete that portion of the budget before we spend a lot of time on the normal levy and operational side of things. But if we find, because of financial realities, as we get reports that maybe we're in a better fiscal situation, we don't need to borrow as much. There's not, with this adoption in April does not lock it in stone. We can repeal and replace.
And
All right.
if I can add to that, Mr. Chair, we've really been trying to emphasize that point because we recognize the concerns. This is a planning tool. This is not meant to be set in stone in concrete, but it is to give us a general direction as we head forward in making our plans financially, both for the next budget cycle, but even for the next several years, because they do have implications sometimes over multiple years. So, but yes, county manager is spot on that there was no intent that this be totally binding, because the fiscal conditions can change dramatically when you bring the full county operating and capital plans together to try to settle a budget.
Great.
And it's important too that this committee understand that not only on this action item are we forwarding a resolution, but attached to the resolution is an actual plan that identifies the projects coming to $3 million plus the $124,000 of levy for fiscal year 22 and lays out a schedule for each of the next 4 years, which is subject to change and review every year, but lays out a schedule so that what's adopting, you know, there are details. Hopefully the committee has had a chance to review those details and nobody has any problems with those details as they've been laid out, because that will be attached to the resolution.
Supervisor Steen.
Yes, if it's a question for Tom and for you, Chairman Bartlett, is what we're trying to do here to let the county board as a whole have more of an input or more of a feeling that they're participating in the budget process than it currently happens?
I would say that would be part of it. It's also we need to give our administration that brings us a balanced budget some guidance in how to do that, whether we're willing to borrow money or not. It would be really hard for them to bring a balanced budget and to do any capital improvements if we didn't give them some guidance on what we wanted to, on how much we were willing to borrow, I think.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, it also, Supervisor Steen, saves us some time. You know from your years on the board, the way we've done our annual budget has included, you know, it wraps everything together, levy and all the expenses and all the capital improvements, and it can be a very lengthy process. This at least takes this part of it and says, we've looked at it already. This is what we think we want to do. As I say, if conditions change, we can still change it later in the year. But at least it takes that part initially off the table. We've taken care of that, and it makes it maybe less cumbersome of a process for adopting an annual budget.
Supervisor Steen.
Yes, thank you, County Manager Miller. And I agree with what you're saying. I guess all I'm saying is that any steps that we can take or information that we can have to let the rest of the board participate or feel that they're participating, I would be in favor of.
And we will, if this passes, this will be in the county board packet. So that, again, all supervisors have a chance to see the actual plan being recommended by the committee prior to the adoption of the resolution on Wednesday.
Yeah, this will have to be passed by the county board, so we will discuss it more at that meeting. I didn't get to participate in the executive meeting. I wasn't feeling well that you discussed it at executive. I have some reservations about borrowing that much. For vehicles. I've looked at the green book that WCA provides us. I really have some worries about some things. So we'll discuss it more at county board. So are we ready to vote on this and move it on to county board? Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move it on to county board, capital improvements. All right. We might as well just keep going with number 8 and move down to C. 8C, a resolution for Workers' Memorial Day in Dunn County. Can I have a motion for that, please? Supervisor Steen moves. Supervisor Quinn seconds. Discussion on that.
That would be me. Normally this comes from the Committee on Administration. We didn't remember in time to get on the agenda, but we didn't want to skip it because this is something we've done every year. It acknowledges workers, county workers who have died on the job from illnesses or injury or disease associated with doing their job. And you know, the consequences that has for the organization and for the families of the individuals themselves. And so it's an annual acknowledgement of that and an annual opportunity to encourage employees and employers to work safely and work in a healthy way to avoid as much as possible workplace accidents.
So any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. 8D, resolution condemning violence against Asian Pacific Islander. I lost it. Desi American APIDA community. So I need a motion for this.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Tripp moves, Supervisor Morehouse seconds. Speaking to this, Supervisor Tripp.
One thing you'll notice that in the resolution, it does not use the term DESI. DESI is a problematic term that some people accept, other people find a little bit offensive, and I don't see any point in, and frankly, it simply makes a special designation out of South Asians. I didn't think that it was necessary, and I don't want to defend a term that I'm not even very familiar with myself. Otherwise, this is a pretty straightforward resolution. Over the past several months, it seems like, I don't know if it's just more news reports or if the incidents are going up, but random violence against Asians has been problematic. We have a small Asian community in Dunn County, but they're an important part of our society, our economy, and right now they are facing a little bit of an increase in fear and intimidation, and I think this is an important gesture that we can make to say very publicly that we don't approve of the violence, we don't support it, and we would like to see a world where all of our groups, ethnic, racial, whatever, are treated in a manner that we all like to be treated in. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Morehouse.
just a brief point that I would hope that administration would follow the normal route of press release on this. I think it would be important for the county board to be on record in appropriate media outlets, assuming that this passes.
All right, and I would ask that we remove that word DESI from our agenda also, so I don't read the wrong thing again. All in favor, so if we're ready to vote, Supervisor Tripp.
I just noticed, and it's in my copy on the in the packet, but in the resolve section, it uses the acronym APIDA, and I think the D in that acronym ought to be removed because that stands for DESI. And I don't know if Nick and I had talked about this earlier, I think.
Yeah, I've already removed that and then added some punctuation.
All right.
So when administration prepares the packet for the county board meeting,
Okay.
it will be in its correct final form, and that DESI will no longer be anywhere in there or referenced in there. It's not universally derogatory, but in some places it is, and so.
And I've changed it on the county board agenda,
You know.
Supervisor Bartlett.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of this, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Let's see. Moving down to 8E, resolution declaring official intent under reimbursement bond regulations. I need a motion. Supervisor Headland moves, Supervisor McCullough seconds. Speaking to this, Mr. Stry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution is presented to you tonight as more of a precautionary or proactive approach to the planned borrowing for 2021. And it's being proactive in the fact that under open market solicitation of bonding, you only have a certain amount of time that you can reimburse yourself for expenditures that take place before you go to market. Typically it's 60 days for hard costs if you're buying equipment or things like that, or construction projects. Engineering and architectural soft costs typically are waived. The reason we're bringing this forward now is we're still working with our municipal advisor to determine what is the best approach for this fiscal year. This dollar amount is below the general rule of thumb where you necessarily would want to go to market because of the issuance cost versus just doing an RFP for bank loans. However, there are some refinancing and refunding opportunities that we're evaluating right now. We've got the bank loan from 2018 that we could refinance. That's at 4% interest. Right now, the going rate for governments, we could probably cut that in half and save some money. Same thing for another prior debt issue. So we're in the process of analyzing that, and we'll be coming forward with a recommendation at a later date. So we felt this was prudent to take care of this, present this. This doesn't bind the county to anything. All it does is put in place that if we choose to combine the refinancings with the planned debt, we can then reimburse ourselves for any equipment that's being currently bought and not run into any kind of issues there. So again, it's just a proactive approach. So it is our recommendation, both from the municipal advisor, our bond counsel, and myself, to go ahead and move this forward with the recommendation for approval.
Any questions? All right, all in favor, say aye then.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. And I'll stay on the meeting until I have to leave for my next one,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. Now we'll move back up to item 6. Joint Finance Committee Budget Public Hearing. I asked to have this put on there because I think it's pretty important, these public hearings. Supervisor Tripp and I went over to the one 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago in River Falls. Maybe it was longer than that ago. I don't know. But anyway, I think it's important. Our assembly person from Menominee, Assemblyman Moses, mentioned it today when we were meeting with him. I think it'd be great. And meeting with our legislative people the last few days, seems like it's been a whole week or more, but we did a bunch of them in 3 days, I guess. But boy, our staff is so knowledgeable and really knows what their departments need. And I would encourage, and I know I talked with Mr. Miller. I don't know if you do have any department heads that are willing to go there and speak, but I'm hoping we have some people, and definitely anybody, especially the chairs from any of the committees that would like to go speak. As I've said before, this would be a per diem. We'll pay a per diem for any legislative stuff. So I don't know, is there any discussion on this? Does anybody else have an opinion on this?
Mr. Chair,
Supervisor Tripp.
the joint finance hearings that you're talking about tend to get a little bit long, and you need to register early because they take speakers in the order that they register. Usually get about 2 to 3 to 4 minutes. Sometimes it's questionable whether any of the joint finance committee is paying attention to you, but it is a really good opportunity to talk to a large group of people. Because the people at that hearing, and there are usually lots and lots of them, are all there to testify for one thing or another, and it's a really good opportunity to make a point. I'm going to be there for the library system next week, and I don't know if any of our staff, other than, well, I don't know if any of our staff will be there testifying. But it's kind of a mixed bag of things. It not only gives you an opportunity to speak to a large group, but it also signals to the Joint Finance Committee that you're serious about what you're doing, and enough so that you're going to take some time and make some effort to go there. The other last thing I would point out is that you can always take a printed copy of your remarks as well, and then they have that to take back with them. And their staff looks at those things. So if anybody's of a mind to do that, I would encourage you. It's a nice, long, interesting, boring, long day.
I would encourage Chris to take her staff there. They're really knowledgeable. I'm just so proud of how our county represented itself to our legislators so far.
I know that Mr. Cummings is planning on testifying from Land and Water Conservation. And I think Chase, if you know this, Chase, chime in, but you said there may be a different scheduling protocol for this year. Do you know anything more about that?
Yeah, I'm sure someone probably knows more details than I do, but there is going to be a virtual event on the 28th, I believe, for joint finance hearing. However, the other ones will be in person. I'm not sure. I believe it's up to the venue to decide how they keep socially distanced and accept people in. So I haven't heard any other update than that at this time. So.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, do you have any comment? Have you heard from any of your other department heads if they're going?
I have not, but I had it on my agenda tomorrow after this conversation to send an email to the managers, the heads of all the departments, talking about this again, and hopefully attaching the instructions for how to get yourself on the list of people to speak, to encourage them to do so.
Okay, thank you. Chris, had you any plans of attending that? I know you have a meeting in the late afternoon, but we can't hear you.
Is it your headset again, Chris?
Sometimes stopping the video works, which I know sounds weird, but.
Did that solve the problem?
Yes.
Go figure. It's worn out from the day. Yes, I am planning on attending. I know Josie is planning attending from child support. And I would have my staff attend, except you actually usually do end up sitting there almost the entire time. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Any other questions or discussion on this? So if you get information on that, Mr. Miller, if you'd include it to at least the executive committee, I'd appreciate it.
Will do.
In case anybody would like to go. Thank you. If there's no other questions or discussion on that, we will move on to presentation of Dunn County Economic Development Corporation. We have Mr. Bassani with us. Mr. Steen, did you want to say anything or introduce Bob or anything before he starts?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Bartlett. And I see we made an Italian out of Bob there. Got an O
Yep.
rather than a Y, but I thought this was a good opportunity to have Bob introduce himself to the executive board and give you a little update on what's going on with the Dunn County Economic Development Committee. And so that's all I have to say. And it's my pleasure to introduce you, Bob. Go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you what, I want to thank you guys for the opportunity. I want to bring you guys up to date on a few things. And I think many of you know, and maybe most of you know, that I had been with Dunn County Economic Development many years ago. Now I'm back in that role again. And I want you to know also that in terms of economic development, my focus since I've been back on has been almost entirely project work. I look at economic development as bricks and mortar and jobs more than anything else. I could get lost in a whole bevy of miscellaneous initiatives that in the end, I don't think will amount to any of that. And so I'm just going to give you a quick summary here of some of the projects that I've got on the hopper right now and where they're at. And I'll be open for any questions. I will ask anybody out there that if you have anything or you're aware of anything in terms of economic development activity that you think could use some assistance, don't hesitate to get them in touch with me. I really, really appreciate it. But among the things we've been working on, one of them is a hardware store in Boyceville. In fact, I met with the principal again this morning. We're working toward trying to get that done. I really want to get this project done. We were running into some construction cost issues. I don't think I have to tell you that the cost of construction is really getting out of sight. But nonetheless, I'm working with him to put a prospectus together. And my objective with Mark, who also owns a hardware store in Cornell, is to get him the best possible financing package that would give him the greatest opportunity to succeed. So we're in the process of doing that on his behalf, and in that regard, I've worked with some SBA lenders. I'm working with the Regional Business Fund. And I'm looking at some 504 and 7A SBA loan options for him, working with Wisconsin Business Development in that regard. So we're getting, and we're going to get this prospectus put together, and then we'll get to the next step. Additionally, I've done an awful lot of work with the City of Menominee and some principals within the City of Menominee and the Menominee Golf Course, put together their entire pro forma financial projections. And I'm working with them in terms of identifying what it takes to make this work and what type of financing packages would be available for them. And as late as, I don't know, the day before yesterday, I talked to one of the principals, in fact, the driving principal in the project. And they're just working with the owner of the course now to come up with an acceptable purchase price. So when they get that, I'm going to get a hold of me and we can sit down and we can go through it and see how it affects the financial projections. Also here, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I'd gotten a request from a company, and I knew right away that it was a server farm, even though they didn't say it, because the extraordinary amount of electricity that they said they would need. And in fact, they needed within 4 years up to 35 megawatts. That's a ton of electricity. And of course, nobody in the world is going to have that sitting there laying around. So I got engaged with Xcel Energy, got the city involved, and they put a package together on a couple of site options in Menominee Industrial Park. This would be a big deal. And I don't remember now, but I think they're looking at about 100,000 square foot facility. And I don't remember how many jobs, but these are all high technical, well-paying jobs. So, but in the end, the word that I had was that they would be making their decision by the end of the month. And I do believe that at the very least, Menominee has a fighting chance on this particular project. They've got a geographic preference, and so Menominee happens to be right in that specific area. And there's no other community around here that's going to have anything that would suit their needs. It's going to have to be built. I've got a project going on in Knapp. This is going to happen. I think it's going to happen pretty soon. Manufacturing project. I'm working with the principal on that, and I'm going to guess that we can probably look at June, July for that. Although I've got to get a hold of him yet this week or next week to finalize some details in that regard. But I do believe that that's going to go in. Got a company expansion in Menominee Industrial Park, and they want to expand. I've met with them. I will work with them to put a financing package together and work with the developer and with the city and whoever in order to get this done. I'm waiting for some information that they are to provide for me, and when I get that back, then we'll put a package together for them. Okay, I've got another business in Menominee that called me here several weeks ago. They're looking to expand, and I had talked to them last week. Bless you, my goodness.
All right.
And no problem. And So I'm working with them to see if we can't execute that. And this is not a real big project, but nonetheless, it's still a project that would add something. So I'm waiting for some information to come back from him. Additionally, I'm also got a really large scale project. This is a huge project, and the guy has developed a product. And if in fact what I believe is true is really true, this is a huge scale project. Now this guy has got a lot of muscle, but he doesn't have the financial muscle to do this by himself, and he knows it. So I've been talking to him, working with him. I've got some channels in the financial industry that I've already opened the door on. And if in fact the product that he's developed can do what he says, we won't have any problem getting this funded. And I'm already looking at some potential strategic partnerships for him. But this would be a huge project, a really huge project. So we're working through that. I've got a guy that had called me and working on developing a community center. I at first, simply to be honest with you, I met with this guy as a courtesy. I didn't have a lot of hope for it, but after I met with him the first time, I realized that this guy was the real deal. He had done an awful lot of work on getting some of the important information together. So I told him I would continue to work with him, and I will put together his pro formas. I will do all of that. He's gathering some information for me. And when I get it, we'll lay it out. We'll sit down. We'll put something together. I had worked with somebody that was looking to put a food wagon in. Worked really hard to find a kitchen for him. Found somebody who, in fact, could. I don't know what the status of that is now, but you guys may remember years ago the Harmony Center used to have a kitchen that people could rent. They don't have that anymore, but it took me a while to figure that out. But that's been on the table. I'm going to try to catch up with them where they're at. The other thing that we're working on, and this is just exploratory, but there are some producers and growers in Dunn County who might have a desire and actually a physical benefit out of forming a cooperative. So we just got that door open. We're exploring it. It's not an easy thing to do, but on the other hand, I don't know that it can't be done. And I certainly won't know that until we try it. So we're opening that door to work with a variety of producers here in Dunn County, and even beyond that, but at least in the establishment of potential food cooperative. Anaerobic digester. I've got to find out where this is at. I had been talking to them. This is in northern Dunn County. This is a digester that would put on a large farm and digest the slurry and the manure. And create syngas, what's called syngas or synthetic gas, which would be clean, scrubbed, and then moved into the electric cooperative. I connected them with electric cooperative. They were looking for a variety of incentives. They were looking for a grant program, but the program that they had thought might be out there actually expired the end of January. And so they were too late to get into that. And I can't find any others, but they may still be going forward. I've got to find out. It's not a lot of jobs. It's 4 or 5 jobs, I think. And these would be probably trucking jobs, but it's a $16 million investment. And in addition to that, I've actually put them together with someone here in Dunn County who I know builds and has built a lot of anaerobic digestive systems. So I'm hoping that marriage can work as well. And we'll see. A medical device company, I've been working on this one for a long time. It's a company for which I had put the pro formas together. And what I'm trying to do, and I don't have any guarantee on this, but what I'm trying to do is that if in fact the investment groups for whom I provided the information and with whom I've talked move forward, we can take a look at putting it here in Dunn County. And this would be a tech park project in Menominee. And I had talked with them a week ago, last weekend, I think it was. And they're in the process. They asked for some additional information, which I put together for them. And it looks like they have a letter of intent to move forward. So we'll see how that goes. It looks like that might be coming to a conclusion here, yet even potentially in April. And additionally, now I've also got a contracting company out there. In fact, I met with them again yesterday. And this project's going to move forward. And And these guys know what they're doing, and they've got the muscle to do it. They're looking to put up 100 or a 20,000 square foot facility, talking about 50 jobs. I've got at least the potential. I've got Elk Mound and their new TIF district on the table. Okay, so that is a possibility for this particular project, and so we're trying to open the door on that and move forward to the next step. That's going to happen. I'm not quite entirely sure on the timing. It's coming in phases, but the first phase, I think, on this particular project is going to be completed probably within the next 2 weeks. And then we'll be moving into the second phase, and then we'll see how that goes. But yeah, and I've got other things that have come to me all the time. Some of these, a lot of the stuff that comes to me it's I never diminish anybody's enthusiasm. But I also am very honest with people when they come to me in regard to something, and I tell them where they need to be or where I think they need to be and what they need to do. But again, what I'll ask is if you guys have anybody out there who and after hearing some of the things that we will do out of this office, if you got anybody out there that could use some assistance, have them give me a call. Any questions from anybody? Well, I guess I must have been pretty thorough.
Any questions? Yeah, I guess I thought it was very thorough, Bob.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, and none of this is and you guys know better than me. I don't have to tell you this. Not everything that comes to you is going to work, but I know that some of these are going to happen. I know they are. Okay. And I'm working really hard to get these done. I will, and it's going to sound a little self-serving here, guys, and I don't mean it to, but I will provide a level of a service to these projects that maybe they don't typically get, but that's because I want to see them get done. I just want to see them get done. And I have to tell you that because of my experience and a lot of the things that I've done, I've got a lot of the knowledge and experience to help some of these guys in ways that maybe other people can't. So anyway, again, I don't want to sound self-serving, but it is fundamentally true. But again, like I said, you guys got anything? When I came into this job, I told the board, the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation Board, that I wasn't content to sit and wait for something to come to me. Okay, there's stuff that's coming to me all the time. Okay. But on the other hand, I also want to go out and make things happen. So like I said, if you got something, let me know.
Well, thank you for all
Bob?
you do.
Oh, yeah, you're most welcome.
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chairman,
Supervisor Anderson.
thank you. Bob, thank you very much. Good comments. I think the big question is how long can you stay in operation without county or city funding?
So I'll tell you the bitter truth, and I had mentioned this to one of the county board members here just the other day. The bitter truth is that without the county supporting this financially, and secondly the city, without that happening, this organization goes away before the end of the year. Okay. I mean, it's that simple, and there's no point, beating around the bush in that regard. But yeah, but this organization, Dunn County Economic Development, needs county support, and secondly, it needs city support. Doesn't get those two, it goes. It dies by the end of the year. Is that what you want? You were asking me, Jim?
Exactly. Thank you, Bob.
You bet.
Any questions, discussion? If not, thank you, Bob.
You're most welcome. And I'll just ask this, and I know you guys are got more on this meeting on the table, but would anybody be offended if I got some other stuff I got to get done here yet, I think before 5? And so if I leave the meeting, would that be all right?
Yes.
Okay.
By all means, that's fine.
But again, my door's always open. At least my phone's always open. So anybody that needs anything, give me a call. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, that was encouraging for economic development. Moving on to 7A. Consideration of actions to be taken by the executive committee. So recommendation on the directional plan amendment. And I think I need a motion to move this forward.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to kind
For
of
our part.
frame that motion. What staff is requesting from the committee today regarding the directional plan would be an endorsement of the policies and implementation techniques as presented in the staff report, at an endorsement to include them as part of an amendment to the directional plan. It's not ready for a resolution or action by the county board because in addition to these policies and implementation techniques, there are textual changes that have to happen to the body of the directional plan itself and potentially new initiatives that want to be incorporated as well. Staff's goal would be to have an amended directional plan in front of the entire county board for potential adoption by the end of the year. That having been said, what you're looking at today and what we're looking for a motion today is an endorsement of the policies and the implementation techniques, which is a big part of the update that we've all been working on for the past couple months.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Morehouse.
just some clarification. So the amendment would incorporate each of these policies and implementation strategy, the whole package.
Yes.
Thank you.
And when do we discuss if we wanted to change some verbiage in it?
I think if you take a motion, the appropriate thing is then to discuss the actual contents and we can make any changes there. Because the motion is not going to mention these by name, so we can discuss any changes to the verbiage there and then take action. We may need to amend the motion as discussed, but we've done that before.
But we as the executive committee would only do the first couple of sections because that's what the executive committee is looking at. The other committees would look at their own sections, correct?
Yes. Well, sorry that this is so cumbersome. The first three issues that are in the staff report related to demographic alignment, legislative program, and supervisor education and communication. Those three need the executive committee to specifically look at them and offer any amendments and then endorse them because no other committee has done so for those three. The others that are in the staff report, criminal justice, starting on page 3 with criminal justice, those have all been recommended already by standing committees of the county board for inclusion. So there's really two parts that executive is being asked to do today: to weigh in on those first three and to recommend all of them and combined be part of the update to the directional plan.
All right. So let's start with a motion. If I can have a motion to get this on the table and so we can discuss it. Supervisor Tripp moves.
Wait a minute.
Supervisor Steen seconds.
Mr. Chair? Mr.
Yes.
Chair, what I'd like to do is move just the first three sections at the executive committee. And then separate that out from the others. So that would be my motion.
All right. Supervisor Steen, are you okay with that with your second? All right. Now discussion. Supervisor Tripp.
In the legislative program, first of all, I want to say that the policy statement in both cases I thought was excellent. In the implementation for the legislative program, what I would like to see is some mention of the CAP teams. I'd like to see those institutionalized as a specific part of our legislative program. And I had mentioned that prior to this. Now, that's not key to my approval or rejection of this. But I think we need to talk seriously about the CAP program and how we can take advantage of that to promote our legislative policy.
And maybe we could add that to number 5
That would
somehow.
Be,
If I may recommend, perhaps it would be in item 7. Since it's
Item
specific
7.
to item 7 under legislative program, the implementation techniques,
mhm.
the CAP program. And Supervisor Tripp, I would work with you to craft the language that you're looking for. But if I'm understanding, you're saying one of our techniques should be to take advantage of the CAP programs as another means of advocating for our legislative agenda.
That's just what I was going to say.
In those actual words.
Yes, in my actual words. Mr. Chair, can I continue? There's
Yes.
just one other small addition I'd like to see, and it's in the supervisor education communications section. It's under item number 4. It says, encourage county board supervisors to attend the annual conference offered by the Wisconsin Counties Association. And I would like to add a phrase to that encourages participation in other opportunities provided by WCA. As an example, Supervisor Sheila Story is a member of the Standing Committee on Justice and Policing and Justice. I think that's what it is. I think those are really useful activities. So I would just like to add that to item number 4. And then one other really minor thing, there's a typo in number 3.
Say it ain't so.
Engage all county board supervisors in an annual review. So
Thank you.
that's my, now I made a motion to accept this. How do we proceed from here?
We'll probably have to have a as amended, I think.
Can I amend my motion to say
Why
that?
don't you change your motion to as amended, and then we'll get all the amendments in, because there may be somebody else that has one. I think Supervisor McCulloch might have one too. So is it okay for your motion to read as amended, and for your
Yes, it is.
second, Supervisor Steen?
Yes.
All right. Supervisor McCulloch, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize what Jim was saying on item 4 there under supervisor education. Because I know, for example, with highway committee members, the Wisconsin County Highways Association meetings are terribly valuable. So just that, we all have our sub areas, particularly for our committees that are relevant to that, which I think would be a useful tool to look at.
Right. Just like the CAP they have one for the supervisors, and then they also, like, they had another one for human services that I have one. Does anybody else have anything? Well, I have one. I would like to see us change number 5, the word encourage, to expect. Because I expect people that are on the county board to read the agendas and the materials. And that's a pet peeve of mine, when people come and ask questions that were right there in front of them. So obvious that they didn't look at it. So I would encourage us to change that word if it's all right with the rest of you.
Yeah, I would like to personally endorse that. I find that extremely annoying.
All right. Is there anything else? If not, then we're ready to vote on this. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Now, sometime down the road, we're going to have a meeting on the directional plan and put this together. And are we planning on having this come to executive and have a meeting and then to the full county board?
Yes, in fact, as I'm listening to the conversation, so we've passed a motion to recommend on those three policies as amended, and I took the notes. I don't think we need to go ahead at this time and have executive endorse everything else. It's already come from standing committees.
I think all the other committees recommended their sections already, so this is the right way to do it.
I think so, and I don't think we need another motion. What we will aim on doing, however, is when we have completed updates on the text of the directional plan to reflect this major amendment, and perhaps had an opportunity to ask standing committees and managers about any new or additional initiatives that aren't in the plan at this time, that whole thing then would come in front of the executive committee one more time as a major update to the directional plan later this year for adoption, from there for adoption by the county board.
Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Tripp?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just wanted to say thanks and express my appreciation to the staff. I know that the staff that put together the policy for judicial and and law, and now this is really good work. These are well-crafted statements. The rationale that's expressed in the techniques is thorough. I am just so impressed and pleased with the result. And so I think any staff members that worked on this need to be thanked and congratulated.
We'll be sure and pass that on. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Morehouse.
Manager Miller and Bob Colson did really yeoman work in this, and Bob Colson particularly has lots on his plate, and I think this was a really excellent piece of work. So I'd just like to piggyback on Supervisor Tripp with some compliments. This is a lot of work, and it was well done.
Thank you. And I totally agree with that. Anything else? All right, then. Moving on. Did we voted on that, didn't we?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on. Hybrid in-person teleconference meetings.
So if I may start out, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So you have a staff report in your packet.
I lost mine.
Dan Dunbar and his team and I began talking about how we can, as we move toward being able to have in-person meetings again, how we can take advantage of some of what Zoom does for us. And there are clear advantages to maintaining some sort of teleconference element to our meetings, even if we are meeting in person. These include flexibility for supervisors, staff, and public to not necessarily have to travel and physically be in place to participate in a meeting. Earlier this morning at the Highway Committee, I participated, but I was able to, when it wasn't something that I was chiming in on, turn off the camera and simply listen. And I was able to do work on the side rather than if I had attended in person. As much as I enjoy spending time with Supervisor McCullough and the others on the Highway Committee, I wouldn't have been able to do any work while I sat there, unless I brought along a laptop, and that's kind of anyway. I could do it. I could be here at my desk. I could even take phone calls. If for some reason a supervisor finds it, they've got something else, it gives them more flexibility. They could take in a standing committee meeting from home. I'm thinking of farmers, Supervisor Johnson, who maybe they've got something that they were doing out in the field, and rather than stopping early, getting cleaned up and driving into Menominee to attend a meeting, They can jump on a meeting right there at their laptop at home. And there are many, many, many other examples. We may have some that for whatever reason, COVID is an obvious thing if you're ill with COVID, but if you're ill with a cold or the flu, the seasonal flu, you're not necessarily prohibited from participating in a standing committee meeting because you could take in the meeting from home. So we began exploring, can we do a hybrid where we're meeting in person? Yes, but we're improving the options for also attending remotely. That has some technical difficulties to overcome to accomplish that. And that's what Dan and his team and I began looking at. So with that introduction, Dan, if you don't mind, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of walk the committee through what we've come up with as a possible solution for primarily and first for standing committees, secondarily for county board.
Yeah, so we wanted to see how much we could utilize the existing system that is in the boardroom and allow the in-person meeting to happen as it would have prior to COVID in person. So what we were really looking at is to utilize that technology while also being able to allow external our hybrid people, so our external attendees, to broadcast their voice within that boardroom, while also allowing the boardroom members to be able to see and interact with those people. One of the biggest things that you run into when you have a scenario where multiple people are in the room is the issue of feedback. And basically, feedback is when a microphone hears a speaker. So as you're all sitting in the room, even if you were to have headphones on, there's a lot of microphones in there that are able to pick up that sound, and then it just goes through and starts squealing in people's ears. So we wanted to try and avoid that. And the easiest way that we can avoid that is to have a single audio source. So the solution that we have is we'll actually have a computer in place that will appear as an attendee in a Zoom meeting that will have the name of boardroom or something like that. And all of the audio from the boardroom will go through that one person. So you would still attend that meeting in person with your computer in front of you, and your face will show up on the screen just as it is right now. But your voice, when you are in that room, will actually go through a different channel. So for instance, if I were talking right now, potentially Paul's screen would light up with the little yellow around the box. So that's the scenario that we have, and people who attend remotely would attend just as you are right now. In person, you'd have your computer, you're going to mute your computer and you're going to mute your speaker there, and you're going to use the audio system that exists in the boardroom for that meeting.
So to add a couple things, this anticipates that supervisors and staff who go to a standing committee meeting or a county board meeting, you will need to bring your laptop, because what we're going to do is use the laptop to join Zoom and then be a camera. We talked through, could we have a single camera in a room and simply show the whole room? But if, as any of you know who've tried that, when you have a large enough room, the people that appear on the camera are so small, you really can't make out faces. As opposed to these Zoom meetings where each person has their own camera, we all do the Brady Bunch thing, and you can all see who's talking. You can see the faces. So the idea is supervisors and staff who participate will bring their cameras if they attend in person, or use their, bring their laptops if they attend in person, or simply use their laptops if they attend remotely, so that they are seen. If they are in person and they have the laptop, again, to repeat what Dan just said, we'll have to make sure everybody mutes their laptop and turns off their speaker, because we're going to use the speakers in the boardroom to cast the audio to avoid the feedback issue. Now, we've tried this out. It does work. There are some complications right now. One of them is that the boardroom is being used as a vaccine clinic by the health department. Dan, I didn't get a chance to talk with you about this, so I apologize, maybe catching you flat-footed. Is there any way, does the speaker system that's in the boardroom go into room 60, the room next door? Because what I was wondering is whether or not we could do at least standing committees in room 60 next door. But that would be dependent on a PA system in that room.
Yeah, we can look into that. I think there's some potential that we could get that working. In
the worst case scenario, if we can't, we may not be able to do standing committees until we're not in conflict with the vaccine clinics. And I am presuming that this board, that this committee and the county board is going to agree. Right now, the priority is on our vaccine clinics, and there really isn't another space large enough to allow them to be conducted. It needs to be in the room it's in. But the tear down or rearranging that would be necessary if we tried to shuffle standing committees in and out of that room when it's set up for the vaccine clinics would be logistically, I'm not sure it would not be worth it, to tell you the truth. We'd be better off just to continue with remote meetings. But we will explore whether or not we can get the PA system into room 60, and then standing committees can happen in room 60. Now, that is another change. Judiciary and law used to happen in the judicial center. Highway committee happened at the highway department. The neighbors committee happened at the neighbors. Under this scenario, all of the standing committees would happen in room 60 of the government center here because of the PA needs. Plus, as Supervisor Johnson will tell you, we're not going to have the standing committee of the neighbors for a while anyway. So it's maybe a little less convenient for judicial law or highway. You're not meeting at highway or judicial law, you're meeting here. It's really not that very far distance. It's one of the nice things about having moved from downtown. We're all on the same campus now. Dan, what else are we leaving out?
Yeah, so the other thing that we didn't talk about, so we would have a computer set aside for public comment. So if the public were to be in person and wanted to speak, they would be able to speak at the same podium that they were at. We had also talked, Paul, that you would use that in the past to make your presentations, that potentially you would go over that. We are adding a projector to that space, and so there'd be 2 projectors in the boardroom that would be broadcasting that meeting as well. So if the public were there, they would be able to see the remote attendees as well, and anything that's presented, any PowerPoints or agendas that are presented to the committee.
So like I said, there's logistical considerations. We wanted to present it to the executive committee, kind of get your feel, kind of get your unofficial reactions. We're not looking for a motion, but if we see a bunch of frowny faces about, this looks, like it's too many hoops to jump through, not worth it, or we're just going to get together and have in-person meetings, and if the public wants to show up, they'll show up. I will note, by the way, we are still under guidelines as to maximum occupancy. And while we know from our experience that many of our standing committee meetings happen without any public attending whatsoever, when we meet in person, we do have to be prepared for the possibility, however remote, that too many people of the public show up and that meeting has to be canceled because it is overcrowded and no longer meets the guidelines from the health department regarding attendance inside. I don't think it's very likely, but we do need to recognize that's a possibility while COVID is still a pandemic with which we must contend.
And I think one other item as it comes up is we do intend to have some practice sessions. So prior to this going live, we would make some time available for any of you to come in person or attend remotely and experience it prior to being live and recorded.
And we also, by the way, that's another thing, by using the Zoom, continuing to use Zoom even when we're meeting in person, we make it easier for the public to watch us on the YouTube channel. They don't have to come in person to see what's happening. It creates a record, which is a good thing too. We're a public government. We're open, we're transparent. This is a good thing to have these recordings available. People can watch them at a later date if they choose. We even have anticipated, humans are humans. We're fallible. So we'll have times when people who attend in person forget to bring a laptop. We will have surplus laptops available in those cases where we can accommodate them so they can still be on Zoom, the Zoom part of the in-person meeting. And not to say that we're giving you a pass. We're going to strongly encourage and frequently remind supervisors and staff for these meetings, bring your county issued laptop, because that's your camera. That's how people will see you on Zoom. But we're looking for any feedback from the committee at this point.
Supervisor McCullough.
So one of the things that I was thinking about immediately was we will want to give the public notice that they'll probably want to watch gallery view. If we've got all the feed coming through one specific microphone, then speaker view is going to click over to the empty space. That's just purely a technical issue. Another thing that came to mind is when you mentioned the possibility of someone forgetting their laptop, if we are set up so that we've got a couple of small stands for phones, if you've got your Zoom set up on your phone as well, you could also use that as a secondary camera.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Yep.
Supervisor Morehouse.
I just wanted to say that I think our county YouTube channel has been particularly useful when one can't attend the Zoom meeting remotely. I think it's wonderful for the public. I think it's certainly been helpful for me to attend some standing committee meetings that I wouldn't otherwise have been able to follow. So long as we're making progress towards continuing that, I think it would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, to Supervisor, if I could, Chair, to Supervisor McCullough's point, we did have to, and we will be changing a little bit of how the live stream is done, in that we will be switching to a Zoom webinar to present that. The live stream, just the live stream to YouTube, only shows 25 cameras. So even if you're in gallery mode, and so yes, that not using audio would have been an issue there. So by going to the webinar, anybody who is watching, so our public people who attend the live session will be webinar members, and they'll have direct control over whether they want to be in the Zoom or the gallery on their own. So
Supervisor Tripp. And you are muted if you have something.
I was just going to echo what Supervisor Morehouse said. Having the meetings live streamed and available on YouTube has been just incredibly helpful. I go back to some of the meetings that I've attended just to get some clarification on what was said and how it was said, and who said it. And when I chair meetings, I tend to be a little bit focused and very often miss some of the nuance. So if we can continue to record and have those available, boy, that is just been a godsend in a lot of ways.
Yes, I hope we can. That was what I was hoping for. A hybrid thing like this. I just hope it doesn't end up costing more than we feel we can afford. But I know it's about probably a half a position that we've increased so far for it. Supervisor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Bartlett. I just got a side question. The health department is vaccinating in the county boardroom. Is that the only location that the health department is actually doing it in the county?
Yes.
Anything else? I guess I would ask, is there a PA system or anything that could be used in the judicial center, that big room there, that we could have our meetings if room 60 doesn't work out? Because I would really like to start having these hybrid meetings. This morning, transit, we had one person that couldn't attend because of a computer system. It just seems like every meeting, it seems like somebody has a issue. Just the other day, Supervisor Gary Bjork couldn't get his to, he couldn't hear with it. He was getting pretty frustrated. So I would really like to move to a hybrid.
Mhm.
I'm planning on the next executive meeting being a hybrid, in-person hybrid.
Okay. And we will first investigate room 60 for the PA system. And if worst case scenario, if we're not able, there's even the possibility that it's just a matter of moving speakers over. But we'll look into that, and we will also look into the large room in the judicial center if we need to.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this? All right. Moving on. Thank you. Item 7C. Approval of the budget calendar. We had one change we wanted to that already.
I have noted that it would be appropriate if we can get a motion on the budget calendar as with the line added, the April 21st line added, and then we have discussion.
Supervisor Quinn moves. Supervisor Johnson seconds. So discussion. I lost my sheet, but I looked it over pretty good, so I'm okay, I think. Any other discussion?
I will highlight that if you did get a chance to review it, you saw that there are some dates in October. And as we did last year, we have to move them up from their normally scheduled time because of when the first Tuesday after the second Monday or whatever that formula is falls. In order to have time for the public notification, we have to move up the executive and county board meetings in October. But the other line, as I said, after the April 14th line, we will add a line April 21st, 2021. County board approves the fiscal year 22-26 capital improvement plan, as Supervisor Quinn pointed out.
Any other discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. 7D.
No, we just did that one.
We did that
The
one?
hybrid. We're ready to move on, I think, to item 9.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right. Review of reports, resolutions, ordinance coming to the county board from the standing committees. Health and Human Services Board. Speaking to this, you want to take those, Supervisor Morehouse?
Yeah, I'll just do a brief introduction, and then Chris Corpola is with us, so I'll let her elaborate. All three of these resolutions relate to the CDBG grant, for which essentially the county has already been approved. But the money cannot be used until we redo some basically administrative details of fair housing ordinance, which was missing some statutory language, and some other, sort of very minor things that went in our proposal. So Chris, you can deal with more specifics if you will.
I think you captured it pretty well. After we submitted our grant application, then they came back and said, your fair housing ordinance is outdated. Your resolution for your relocation plan has different language it needs, and you need to, whatever else we needed to do. But anyway,
okay.
so it's all just administrative, and Nick worked to update the fair housing ordinance so that it was, he said it was due for an update anyway, so.
And I'll just add that I'm going to ask, in the interests of getting this money in play, I'm going to ask that we waive a second reading on the fair housing ordinance.
All right. Any questions? If not, we will move on to 9B from the Planning Resource Development Committee. Yeah, we have 3 of them. Supervisor Quinn, do you want to take these?
I can, and then if Chase has something to add, that's fine. But basically, these 2 resolutions are on the same, are combined, and they're on the same topic. We have a producer in the county who has contacted staff with a kind of an ongoing problem, a significant scale, that is dealing with a manure management system that's failing, needs to be repaired because it could impair a local waterway. And it's a very expensive project. And so there's a special state fund that provides financial assistance to this. To access those funds, we have to, 1, authorize application to participate in the program, and then 2, authorize an application to receive funding for this project. Anything you want to add, Chase?
No, I think you covered it quite well, Supervisor Quinn. Yeah, I guess just real quick summary would be the first resolution would be to allow for future resolutions or participation in this program. So we won't need to necessarily re-adopt this resolution in the future. And the second resolution is particular to a specific farm, which we would need in any case that we would apply for grant funds.
Any questions from the committee on this? All right, we will move on. From the Committee on Administration, we have 2 ordinances coming. Supervisor Headland, do you want to take these?
Sure. First one, amending chapter 5 of the Code of Ordinances, is changing some language in the current ordinance. And it's just a couple of items. First is under Part D, is submit the annual budget for the county manager's office to the committee administration. It was written as administrative coordinator. And so we don't have an administrative coordinator. We call the position county manager. And so that will be changed. Next, down in Part G of this, we're going to strike any appointment by the county manager under this paragraph requires confirmation by the county board. And that was basic positions that would be serving under a department manager. That those positions could be taken care of without the approval of the county board. However, the positions of clerk, treasurer, register of deeds and so forth that are elected positions, those positions have vacated as we're doing now, would still fall under approval by the committees and then on to the county board for final approval. So it's just cleaning up the ability to hire people to fill vacant positions for the county. Next is amending Code of Ordinance relating to disposal of surplus property. And this is a very well, I think, developed outline of what we're going to do depending on what the property itself is. And it's going to takes care of everything from disposal of ex squad cars to, desks and computers or anything else that we may have in the county. So I think it's a good complete package and something we need to approve. The other thing we have coming from our committee to you to think about is that we did, as Mr. Miller brought up before, meet, and we heard from 3 candidates for the vacated position of county treasurer. We conducted interviews with all 3 All three were asked the same series of a dozen questions. And at the end of that series of interviews, the committee did recommend that a current county employee, Arlene or Sifia, which she prefers to go by, Jevney, would be the recommendation coming from the administrative committee and staff to forward on to the county board as who we recommend to fill the vacant position of county treasurer.
Any questions on any of that? See nothing. All right. Reports from the standing committees. We'll start with, I'll start with the top, the way I see them on my screen. Supervisor Headland, you're next.
Okay. The only
anything else?
Nothing else at this point, except that we will be holding our scheduled meeting, at least up to this point, which coming up the 4th Thursday afternoon of the month as usual. However, as Mr. Miller said, if things can happen soon enough and quick enough and appropriately enough, we will also probably do as we did with the treasurer position. And part of that meeting would be to interview possible candidates for the position of clerk. As of this point, that's not part of the meeting that we know of, but it may become part of that meeting. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Moving on. Supervisor Anderson, CRT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make this brief, but we had our CRT meeting Monday, and the main thing that I'm really happy and proud of is I was able to report to the rest of the committee the 5, actually 6 broadband grants that came into Dunn County, and that came to almost $4 million. Mosaic up in your territory in northern part of Dunn County got a couple of them, one in the town of New Haven, and then Otter Creek and Sand Creek, and then Bloomer Telephone south of Colfax toward Elk Mound, almost $1 million, and 24/7 telecom here in Menominee got 3 grants. One of them is in town of Menominee, one of them in 2 in the town of Menominee, one in north part of the township, and one in Irvington, and another one in Red Cedar. So one thing that the governor has declared this as the broadband year, and that's great news. I think whenever realizing that broadband is crucial. And so we talked a great deal about broadband at our CRT meeting. And Bob Colson has been, as other supervisors well know, is loaded. So he's not able to quite give us as much time as we have had in the past. So much of that is falling into the laps of our Dunn County Economic Development Executive Director. And by providing letters of support and getting a hold and doing all of these things of help. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the most important part of our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Johnson from the neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Neighbors Committee last met March 18th. We were provided updates from the Quality Assurance Committee. In employment activity, there was 5 new hires and 4 resignations, and there was 460 hours missed because of COVID-related issues in February. Administrator Flunker provided information regarding RFP for class/comp study and utilizing CARE Act funding for staff retention and/or recognition. The census was at 108 at the end of February, and Arrowhead remains closed. There have been some issues with the geothermal heat pumps. A COVID vaccination date of March 1st was scheduled for staff and remaining residents. Administrator Flunker stated in person In-person visits have started, but if an outbreak would occur, visitations will be paused. Information on a recent study was provided to the committee. The facility was found to be in compliance and no citations were issued. The committee approved forwarding the directional plan with revisions. And our next meeting will be tomorrow at 10:30, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Morehouse, Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health and Human Services Board last met on March 25th. I did ask KT, since we seem to be moving towards slow reopening, to review with the committee the criteria that are being used for making decisions on reopening. Our 7-day case average, percent positivity rate, the extent to which, if at all, the health department and our hospitals are being overwhelmed. Generally speaking, not every gathering is vetted or reopening is vetted by the health department, but she is working with those that contact her to identify what their risk tolerance is for reopening. So I think that was very helpful. We had regular reports from all three of our agencies. Veteran Services, always excellent. Public Health reviewed a recent uptick, which is still happening in COVID cases. And vaccination rates, these have certainly changed, but at that point, 50% of our over 65 population had received both doses of the vaccine, and about 13% of the total county population had received at least one vaccine. Human Services, always an excellent report, and we are spending a bit more time educating the committee about who some of the vendors are and what services are provided to Human Services as we review a fairly significant amount of voucher payments each month. And the good news from Human Services, which is obviously very well managed, is that we will be, this is not audited, but we will be returning money to the Treasury in the amount of 200,000 or so. But that will be await the audit. We identified an item for the directional plan and approved the 3 CDBG related items that we've just looked at. And our next meeting is March 22nd. Thank you.
It's probably April.
I wrote down March, didn't I? Yes, I'm sorry. It's April.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to Supervisor Tripp for Judicial and Law.
Pretty standard business. The main part of the meeting was occupied with the directional plan, and you see the results of the judiciary and law policy there. In addition to that, though, the committee had also been tasked with taking a look at the other 10 items that accompany the pyramid, and they were asked to comment and make suggestions in that area. And just real briefly, the things that we talked about that might be included at some place in the directional plan were, they were interested in the status of the broadband in terms of policy, but potentially adding language in regard to housing issues in the county as a priority. They talked about a broader definition of our environmental policy that would include, I think our environmental policy now focuses on water quality, which was, that was the big deal. And they talked about expanding that. And the third one was sustainability. And we've talked about sustainability in the context of directional planning before. And with the increasing impact of climate change, that was one of those things that committee members would like to discuss more in relation to the directional plan. Other than that, things are running pretty much as usual. You may have heard some rumbling about the State Department of Corrections not paying for housing state prisoners. That issue has been resolved, and the county did not suffer any significant setbacks because of that. The one area that we are a little bit disappointed in right now is because we have jail space, we had made arrangements to rent some of that jail space to state prisoners who were in transition, basically. And we've got a contract to take as many as 15 prisoners. And that can be a pretty nice little source of revenue for the county. However, during the COVID, and I don't know if there are other things going on, I think we're down right now to 3 prisoners. So the sheriff's budget had projected, I think, a little more revenue from that program, which he won't be seeing. So we'll have to deal with that. Our next meeting is, I don't know, end of April sometime. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Maves, Facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our last meeting was on March 24th. And one of the items we're working on is a resolution to be carbon free by the year 2050 for the county. And we're working on different verbiage to try to keep it as neutral as possible and in order to get more support for it. We're also, there was a roof leak out at the Judicial Center, and there was a walkthrough with 4 contractors as far as replacing of the roof out there. So that took place. We also talked about the facilities fleet. We're working, we got some vehicles in, and as to exchanging them out, so that's in process. We also had an update from Bob Colson on the Accessibility Wisconsin Tract Wheelchair Agreement. The Rotary Club is still on board for that as a partner, as a co-host. So that is moving forward. And we also spent a lot of time on our directional plan, as all the other committees did. As far as the fair, the report there is the fair is planning both styles of fair, the traditional and what they had last year. They're with Deb being the president of the State Fair Board Association. She's constantly getting input from fairs that are going on in the southern part of the United States as to what's working, what's not working. So keeping a very close tabs on all that. So that's all, working good. Otherwise, it's pretty much business as usual. Getting ready for spring to be here and start mowing grass. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Quinn, PR&D.
Thank you. We had our last meeting on Tuesday. We dealt with 2 main items there. The first one was a public hearing. Excuse me. Public hearing dealing with land division ordinance revisions. Has to do with basically how we do land divisions, primarily in unzoned townships. And this is something that Mr. Carlson, the county surveyor, has been working on for 7 or 8 months. And we've had a number of meetings about, a review of, and we finally did the final review, had the hearing. We expected, but did not have any public testimony. And we were able to, I think, finally, with help from Mr. Carlson and Mr. Lang, come up with an ordinance that is, we think, very good and reads the way we want it to read. So that'll be coming before the board in the future. We also did a review of the nutrient and manure management ordinance. Chase led us through that document, which has also been worked on for the last 6 months or so. And I think we're at the point where we're going to schedule a public hearing in May on that. We had an update on kind of the status of the comprehensive plan, and this last month, and we had a review from zoning and survey about the increase they're getting now in activity, and a report from the departments, included a report from the solid waste department about their plan for disposal of assets. We also, outside of the meetings, Chase and I had a chance to do a presentation to the State Land and Water Conservation Board, basically presenting our 10-year plan for the department. And we reviewed the past period of time and the things that have been accomplished, and then the future plans that we've talked about. I think Chase put together a really good written document and provided a very concise and thorough explanation to the board. They asked a number of really good questions, and in the end, they approved the plan, and we're going to move forward to implement it. So it was really a positive experience. That's about it. Thanks.
You're muted, Dave.
Thank you. And thank you to Supervisor Quinn, and moving on to Supervisor McCullough, Highway and Transit.
All right, the good news in brief first. We are shifting over to spring operations pretty easily and smoothly. We worked our way through a bunch of the annual materials bids today. Got through those very easily. The mild winter means that we didn't spend as much on snow removal. And then the bad news. So it was brought to our attention today that we've had a significant budgeting issue. And I might defer to either County Manager Miller to explain the details or to Keith Stray, but you should probably be made aware. Paul, do you have a?
I can give the Reader's Digest condensed version. The upshot is, for the past several years, there has been a revenue line item included in each of the highway department's budgets each year to the tune of approximately $1.5 million. We're not certain if it's a legacy line item from something else, or if it was perhaps a placeholder during the transition to SAP. Be that as it may, it was a revenue line item that was relied on to calculate expenditures. There was no revenue. So the 1.5 roughly $1 million each year is what is slowly drawing down the highway department's highway fund balance to the point that it is gone. And we need to, for this year, making it, we picked up on the fact that the fund balance was disappearing last year. We planned no drawdown on the fund balance this year, but that revenue line item still remains something we've just discovered. And that means that we're going to have to adjust our expenditures in 21 to the tune of, again, approximately $1.5 million.
So we are dealing with the aftermath of that now. I'm sure that we can try and answer any questions anyone has immediately, or otherwise that concludes my report.
Oh, you're leaving us on a real bad note here.
I was as we were going through, I'm like, I don't really want to be last.
I should have taken you first. I should have started at the bottom.
I was going to say Supervisor McCullough is sort of like the most dangerous animal in the world, the panda, which eats, shoots, and leaves.
So any questions or anything?
Mr.
All
Chairman?
right. Yes,
So
Supervisor Morehouse.
So there is no highway fund any longer?
There's no fund balance.
There's no fund balance. It's empty.
Yes.
Okay.
Supervisor Steen.
Yeah, so what's the reason?
The $1.5 million that was budgeted as revenue, because there was no actual revenue. And at the end of each year for reconciliation, the money had to come from somewhere. And so reconciliation, it came from the fund balance.
I guess I'm looking for a more fuller explanation. How did this happen?
So are we, Supervisor Steen. We are still in the process of doing the forensics on this. It's complicated by the fact that this line item was in place before the current staff was. And that's an important part of the answer is going to be, what was it intended for? How did it get there? That's only part of what we need to figure out, but we are still investigating that. We will we're committed to full transparency. When we know the answers, we will be filling in the highway committee and the rest of the county board.
I got an additional question then. What were we assuming was in the fund balance going into this year?
This year, we knew we didn't have anything. We
Well,
planned no
last year-
drawdown this year. Last year, we assumed we had enough. I think we had scheduled a drawdown of the tune of $1.25 million for equipment. And we discovered we didn't have it at that time. That's when we discovered that emptied the fund balance, which had been in the area of $4 million previously. We discovered it was gone last year.
So you're telling me that we went from 4 million to 0 in about 4 or 5 years?
4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point, I believe we've traced it back to 2016, and we're now looking into previous years to see if we can find out when that issue was introduced, and ideally how, but.
Any other discussion on this?
No.
The corporation
All
counsel
right.
said no.
Probably better we don't then. All right, moving on. Our next meeting, as I said, I'm hoping it's going to be a hybrid meeting in person. So plan on that. Anything else before we adjourn? I see nothing, so thank you for attending. We will see you